Live here, live there, live here. Alrighty. Welcome to the Truman Show. Your eyes are not deceiving you. We are here in front of the Lorraine Hotel, which is now the National Civil Rights Museum. I'm actually sitting right in front of it. Normally I'm behind the camera, but we want to summarize what you've seen in the first 4 episodes of the Truman Show. A lot to summarize, so I'm going to be jumping back and forth. I'm going to assume that you've seen all 4 episodes, but I know that some of you may see this one and may not have seen the other one, so I'll try to explain some things. So if I go over some things you've already seen, that's why. Anyway, location here is again Memphis, Tennessee, Lorraine Hotel. It's not exactly the nicest place to be because it's a place where Dr. King was killed. Right there, 3rd floor of that room, and that's now a museum. And I'm actually across from where Jacqueline Smith has been protesting this museum, and you can look up her and her story. She doesn't do any film interviews and things of that nature, but Jackie, when you see this, was good. We've had plenty of conversations while I've been here in Memphis, and we're right across from where she sits, so right in front of the Lorraine Hotel. And it's a fitting location because we're wrapping up the Memphis shoot. And we've been in Nashville, we've been to New Orleans, we've been to Fort Worth, just came from Fort Worth, and we've been to Atlanta. 4 episodes, and Memphis is the 5th episode. So I'm going to kind of recap what we've talked about, what we've done up to this point. I'm going to give you a little glimpse of where we're going to go from here on forward, and we'll see what actually happens. What we've gotten so far has been beyond our imagination. So we just wanted to start with Atlanta. We just wanted to get together, Casey and I, and we planned this. We planned to have this run. So we were going to film the reality show, The Truman Show, about a guy that woke up in the Matrix, an engineer that woke up in the Matrix, and that's me. And we pretty much turned the cameras on the Matrix. So our set is the Matrix, is the world, right? So you see this is our set. So we're filming, and it looks high quality production because we've been prepared and we've studied and tried to master our crafts the best we can. Okay, so we can shoot and edit this and put this out without anybody touching it, right? So that's direct from us to you, because a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are going to be controversial and would be censored and are not talked about in the mainstream. So there's a lot of things that are going on, right? And it has to do a lot with spirituality. This whole thread of this Truman Show is about spirituality. It's about you realizing the potential that you have within you, right? And let's just look at it from a scientific standpoint. We'll back up, and then we'll get to the Charleston White episode, because Fort Worth is where a lot of things happen. So we're going to rewind to just the basics. We're going to just cover the basics. So if you were to boil down, in the Large Hadron Collider kind of tries to look at things to the very, very smallest scale, okay? Not to the molecule, not to the atom, to the things that make up atoms. And the theory is, at the end of all of this is vibrating strings of light. That's what all of this is at its base layer, right? That's one theory, right? How would we be able to measure that? But I'm just saying, vibrating strings of light. They call it string theory. These vibrating strings of light vibrate in this particular way, and then eventually they form the subatomic particles that form the atomic particles, which form the molecules, blah, blah, blah. So vibrating strings of light scales up to this. So if that's the case, and if all we are is energy and vibrating strings of light, from a scientific standpoint, the things that divide us and that we fight over, such as racism, religion, and things of that nature, anything superficial is superficial, right? So from a scientific standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, that's one of the things that I want to put out there, is that racism doesn't make sense, right? It's stupid from a scientific standpoint, okay? We're all the same energy. We're all the same thing experiencing its creation, right? That's a spiritual journey. And that journey has led us to the path that we're on. From starting out in Atlanta and not knowing what's going to happen, to meeting Charleston White and also Matthew Knowles, right? Shout out to Matthew Knowles as well. And we'll tell that story when we get there. Alrighty, so we started off in Atlanta, we got our bearings together, and we kind of talked about the core tenets of spirituality, right? We talked about the 100-Degree Challenge, which is a short book that I wrote, which goes backwards, right? A lot of what we hear about religion and things are outward seeking. It's about outward this, outward that, outward savior. Someone's going to do something for you, whereas the spiritual journey is going within, right? It's understanding who and what you are. And we talk about things that are unexplored. How much of the ocean is unexplored? How much of space is unexplored? How much of the earth is unexplored? How much of yourself is unexplored? How much of human consciousness is unexplored? So as an engineer and one that wants to contribute to the world on a large scale, right, I want to make an impact like the people that I look up to, they made impact. So how would you do that? Several different ways. But first of all, you have to know who is making the impact. And a lot of us don't know who we are, as surprising as that is. And a lot of the things that are going on in this reality is because of that. So the spiritual problem is the root cause of it all, because that's what we are at our core, spiritual beings. So when we reconnect to that, a lot of things will get untangled, right? So that's why I focused on that from a small scale and a macro scale. And we'll get into that further on down the line. I'm trying not to get too complicated here, okay? So we started there, and each episode we had music and things of that nature just to show that we're creators. So we shoot, we edit, and we can take plain air and create what you're seeing now.
We back with a commercial. We back with the commercial. How you say that word again? Commercial. Yeah, we back with a commercial, and we doing it like this, and we gotta like do it like this, and cause we gotta take it back to the stove, and we gotta get five. What the word? Bajillion. That's not a word. Yeah, we gotta get 5 bajillions. And we gotta take it back to the what? Take it back. We gotta take it back to the farm to things. I don't know what that is, but we gotta take it there. Right. Okay. All right. Cool.
Right, we have that ability just within ourselves, and that's what we've been doing, right? So again, a way to directly communicate with the audience. And who's the audience? The 99% of us that are here on the brink of dang on nuclear war because of foolishness, right? That's really what we got going on, right? We got 1% controlling the 99%. This is another reason why knowing yourself and spirituality is important. The only way 1% can control 99% is if 99% don't know their value. So that's why knowing your value is important, especially when the 1% are greedy, manipulative, liars, and controlling, and childish, and are about to destroy this beautiful planet that we live on for what, right? I mean, if you look in the news now, it's talking about what to do in a nuclear fallout and this, that, and the other. So they're programming the mass consciousness for this Armageddon, right? And some people are saying, bring it on, because we're ready for Jeebus to come back and the second coming and ready for the world to end. But before we go off the deep end on that, let's kind of just step back and let's really just take a look at this thing. Because just like riding in your own neighborhood, destroying your own thing, why would we destroy our own planet? We're gonna be the ones that have to fix it anyway. So let's be smart enough to not do it in the first place, right? That's where the self-reflection, that's where we have to ask questions. That's where we have to have the uncomfortable conversations, just like the one we had in New Orleans. So we're showing you our level of production, but we're also showing you what we do and how we interact. We can have fun like we do in Atlanta, but we can also be serious like we did in New Orleans. And we can also talk to big time celebrities like we did in Fort Worth. And the spiritual journey weaves through all of that, right? So in Nashville was another big event where we talked about AI and things of that nature. So we have a wide range that we cover. And we talk about it from an engineering standpoint, from a scientific standpoint. I'm a mechanical engineer. That's the same degree that Bill Nye the Science Guy has, right? So let's talk about this from an engineering standpoint. As we discussed in New Orleans, as we discussed with Larry, who was gracious to come in on that conversation, a true scientist would want his theory to be disproved. So what about the scientists that awaken in the matrix, right? And there's another layer to reality, right? And we understand reality is multi-layered. We talk about multiple dimensions, but what about the multiple dimensions of ourselves? What about our spiritual nature? It's multi-layered, right? And there's stories about people awakening. There's stories that we tell our kids, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. We've probably heard that fairy tale. But what about waking up in the dream? We hear about people awakening, we hear about Buddha and things of that nature. So more in the East than in the West, because in the West, in the Christian nation, it's more about Jeebus and being saved You know, we're supposedly Christian, and that's our foundation. So it's not really about self-realization and things of that nature. In more of the East, you see more of that. But at the end of the day, that's what it's about. You know, these religions that we're fighting over, you know, who's fighting over these things? That's where Charleston White comes in. Because we wanted to talk to him, for one, to get an idea of the guy behind the character. And he talks about his character that he's playing that is controversial, to say the least. But anyway, he is an intelligent person, and we got to see that side of him. And also a spiritual person. And also his homeboys. It was interesting to hear the spiritual talk with his associate. So that will come out in the documentary that we shot as well. So these are all things that we've accumulated over this journey, right? So Atlanta, Nashville, New Orleans, Fort Worth, interview Charleston White, reality show, documentary, music, right? We're showing you proof of concept of what we can do. Just two people. There's one in front of the camera and one in behind the camera. And both of us really like to be behind the camera. I'm really quiet at the end of the day, but what I feel I'm saying, no one is saying yet. So that's why I'm on this side of the camera, but I go back and forth, right? Charleston is someone that we stayed on the back end of, and he was gracious enough to allow us to see how he lives, and talk to his family and friends, and got to see another side of him. And we shared that side with you, and hopefully he enjoyed that as well. And while there, we got enough footage to film a documentary, which we'll talk about also. One of the cool things, because at the start of this journey at the Atlanta episode, I didn't know who Charleston White was. So we went from not knowing who he is to interviewing him within a couple months. I mean, we've only been working together on these episodes a few months. So the progression has been amazing, right? Beyond both our expectations. And even the things that happen along the line, the synchronicities are ridiculous. And also just to meeting people. Just, for instance, meeting Charleston White is one thing, right? Being able to interview him is another thing. He's a busy person. Being able to see the behind the scenes is another thing. And then in the midst of that, to rub elbows with Matthew Knowles is another thing. I know who he was, right? I know who he was or who he is, but that person sitting at the bar that I was talking to, it didn't register that that's who he was, right? So we ended up having a conversation. He ended up wearing one of these bracelets that talks about my name, Vikter Bang, which stands for Victory Over Noise, and SIA, which stands for Spirituality in Action. That's what we're doing, Spirituality in Action. And we'll talk about what we're going to do with these productions, because we're going to use these to help fund sustainable centers that, for one, it's pretty much like STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, right? We're showing the art side, math, and I think, STEAM, right? So, that's what we're doing for the next generation and for us to learn as well. We can have facilities that we can do a lot with, and we won't get into that here. What we're going to talk about here is the production, because we're going to package this up and we're going to present this to the next level, right? Because we want to take this show on the road. We're showing you our ability to shoot. We're showing you what we're able to do on location. It doesn't matter. All we need is us, and we can make it look like this, right? So we want to take the show on the road, and we want to interact with you. The way we interacted in Nashville and the way we interacted in Atlanta, those that were there, the guy with the blue hat, right? That's how we want to interact with you. And I don't have my glove on me, but it's really about white glove service, and it's also about the thing with the glove. I know I'm bouncing all over the place. The thing with the glove is you're playing the game against yourself. You're your only competition. It's like golf. You're trying to lower your score, right? You're not going to be like me. I'm not going to be like you. We're not meant to be the same. That's why we all have different fingerprints, right? So we're meant to be unique, right? And that uniqueness is your own special sauce. It's your own aura, if you will, right? And each one of us has that. My dream is for us to realize that and amplify that and really reach the potential of what that is, because the human potential is infinite as far as we can tell, right? Infinite as far as we can tell. So going back to Charleston White and how he relates to it from a spiritual standpoint and from a controversial standpoint, because he was saying some controversial things about gang members, and people were agreeing on principle but maybe disagreeing with delivery and all of that stuff. You can look into that. But I was interested in what he was saying. It was interesting in how he was saying it when he was talking about a character. I was curious the person behind the character, but it was also interesting the level of attention he was getting. which was good, and level of attention with the youth. So that all coincided to us wanting to talk to him. And while we were there, again, we rubbed elbows with Matthew knows. But his thing is, for instance, gang violence. That's one of the things that he speaks out against. And let's take that conversation, because most people will agree that gang violence, yeah, what are we fighting over at the end of the day, right? When we ask that question, what are we fighting over? You know, are we fighting over colors, or do we really know? And who are we harming? Are we harming ourselves? Is this really beneficial or valuable? And I said, other ways that we can use that energy and that power and the intellect and all the things that go behind this strategy, behind these things, to benefit our communities, right? There's something better that we can be doing. And we have ideas and I have ideas, but I know our idea is going to be better than mine. So part of it is showing this conversation, and let's talk about these things. It's part of what Charleston White is hitting on, because we can take this whole gang conversation to a bigger game. We can talk about the left and the right. We can talk about the red and the blue, the Democrat and Republican. We can talk about the conservative and the liberals and the fighting that goes on there and the laws that goes on there, right? And when you scale that up, what are they fighting over, right? Is it really just competition, one versus the other? You know, what is the end game? Is it really a double-headed snake, or a bird can't fly if both wings aren't working together, right? So if the right wing fights the left wing, it's not going to take off. So there's one thing to keep in mind when you look at just the conflicts of this side versus that side. And sometimes there's a puppeteer behind both sides of those conflicts, right? But that's what we're talking about. Does this make sense? Is this valuable? Because you look at this conflict, right? You say the red and blue doesn't matter. Okay, well, does the Democrat and Republican matter? Right? At the end of the day, we're people, right? And you may subscribe to this belief or that belief, but most of us will agree that we want peace, we want health, and we just want to enjoy the things that we're passionate about, right? And to learn and evolve. Now, what we add on to that, a lot of that is programmed. And a lot of that programming is to keep us divided and to keep us separated and fighting each other, so that we don't realize that we're the ones that have the power, okay? So I know I'm putting a whole lot of things together, but this is a summary, right? So we'll summarize a lot of things, because these are the things that people like him talked about. These are the things that people like Jesus talked about. But here's the difference between people like him and people like me and people like Jesus. Jesus was a rebel. Jesus was against the church and the state, right? And when you look at what's going on now, and I'm not going to say he wasn't a rebel, or when I say he, I'm talking about Martin, that Martin Luther King wasn't a rebel, but he was affiliated with the church. I'm not affiliated with any church, right? Same thing, against the church and the state. Those are two things. I feel these religions are just like another layer of these gangs that have killed a lot of us. For what? Right? So when Charleston White talks about gang violence, you can extrapolate that to religious violence, extrapolate that out to national violence, right? And extrapolate that to, it doesn't matter if we kill ourselves in a nuclear war, which is what they're priming us for. So we got to think strategically, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to show you an alternative. We're going to get you involved in the conversation. And we're trying to do it in as creative as a way that we can. All righty? I'm MJ. Behind me is MJ, aka Vikter. Behind me is Casey with BMP. Peace, y'all.